So, good morning. Um, I've been looking at some of the notes people have been putting in about emotivism. I think on the whole, people seem to understand it, which is good, but I'm going to explain it again anyway and just make sure that we are at least loosely happy with it. This shouldn't take very long. Your main work is really to get cracking on that essay. So, emotivism, I mean, there's a clue in the name, it's about emotions. Um, so, we've seen non naturalism, intuitionism, and probably you weren't entirely convinced by the idea that we can just intuit the truth of moral claims. Maybe you were, but I would imagine probably you weren't. So, to a new theory comes along at this point. Then you can associate it with Stevenson, but we're going to associate it primarily with A.J. Ayer. So we have seen his verification principle, and that he does not think that there is cognitivist content in moral statements. It just is not truth apt. There is nothing true or false in a moral claim. And if you think they are, you're talking nonsense. However, he did want to sit back and think, well, what is moral language about then? What are we doing? So, highly influenced by Hume, but taking a slightly different approach, he suggested that in moral language, and this is about language, it's about what do moral utterances mean. Okay? In ontological terms, he's an anti-realist. There is no good out there. But in linguistic terms, this is going to be a non-cognitivist account. Okay? Moral language does not state fact. It is not truth apt. It isn't informative. It is not cognitivist. It doesn't say anything about the world at all, which is why it's not informative and it doesn't state fact. Instead, it is emotive or expressive in meaning, so it doesn't refer to the moral qualities out there in the world. Instead, it expresses the speaker's emotions. The word attitudes is one I would really hold on to. Don't use the word opinion. Don't. Use the word attitude. So, when we say, as he goes on to say, when we say courage is good, we're saying something like, hooray for courage. When we say rape is wrong, we're saying, ugh, yuck, rape, or boo, rape. That's got no truth aptness to it. That's just how we feel about the world. So we're not deriving moral language from facts about the world. Yes, we're not moving from is's, facts out there, to oughts, how the world should be. Instead, we're looking at facts and we're just feeling things about them. Very much really the same way as you would about Marmite. Yes, if you take some Marmite, smear it on a piece of toast. Now you could make truth apt statements about it. You could say the Marmite is a millimetre thick. That's true or false. You could say the Marmite is sort of a blacky browny colour. That's true or false. But if you say Marmite yuck and your friend says Marmite yum, neither of you are true or false. It's just your attitude to Marmite. That really is what Ayer says moral language is doing as well. We're not saying anything true or false about the world. We're simply expressing our emotional response to what's going on in front of us, and probably we hope to evoke that response in someone else. So if Erin does something which I think is wrong, I say, Erin, that's wicked. I'm partly saying, Erin, boo, or your act, boo, anyway. But I'm also hoping that Erin will think, my act, ugh, and stop doing it. But I'm not saying anything really about the act, just about my attitude to the act. Which is why I really would expect you to put in your notes the idea that emotivism has become known as boo hooray theory, because that really gets to the heart of it. When I say something is right, I mean that thing hooray. When I say something is wrong, I mean that action boo. Okay, so I think that should be reasonably clear. I cut out a bit there which is unimportant for us. So emotivism has it that saying kindness is good means hooray for kindness. That's not stating anything either true or false. So it doesn't make sense to say, is hooray for kindness true? Not at all. I mean, it's just your attitude to kindness. or to state I know that, hooray for kindness, because that's not a proposition. The phrase hooray for isn't a statement, it's not a proposition, it's just an expression of an attitude. So non-cognitivist. Moral language is just a way for the speaker to let off steam about issues they care about. So you could think about it as being like, if I were to kick you and you scream, that's not true or false, it's just you expressing your pain. Yes, if you took a mouthful of Marmite and that's not true or false, that's just you expressing your disgust. And if I do something that you think is awful and you say that's wicked, that's not true or false, it just expresses your disgust about what I have done. Okay. Moral language then lets off steam and it tries to work on the emotions of the listener. So if you want to change someone else's mind, then you try to give them an emotional feel about something. So I try to make you feel something. So if I want you, if you're saying, well, I'm planning to go out there and murder babies. If I say, but murdering is wrong, and I mean that there's something out there in the world which is wrongness, you can say, well, why is it wrong? What out there makes it wrong? And to be honest, I'm going to struggle with answering that question. But if I say, oh my word, murdering is wicked, it's evil, I'm trying to manipulate you in effect with language into feeling that action is in some sense awful, and that you feel awful about that action, so you're not going to do that action because of a feel. Yeah, so it's an attitude or a feel, but it's not a truth. As it says, emotivism can be compared to matters of taste. For example, suppose I enjoy a cup of tea and say this tea is good. An emotivist would say this meant hooray for tea, and probably you would say that as well. Or this tea, So it's not about the objective facts about the tea. I don't know if you know any objective facts about the tea, but you probably don't care. Your decision of whether or not you like it has nothing to do with the facts. It's your attitude to tea. Exactly the same here with moral statements, moral utterances. You don't care about the facts, it's your attitude to the facts. Okay? And so on. So according to Emotivism, morals are just like that. On the one hand, there are objective facts, for instance, about abortion. So there are lots of facts you could give. You could say, what's the mental condition of the mother? What's the physical or the condition of the fetus? What does the law say? What drugs are available? How skilled are the doctors? What other options are? There's lots of facts. But none of those facts, as we've seen with Hume, and indeed really as we've seen with More, can take you anywhere near knowing whether it's right or wrong. What takes you to right or wrong is just how people feel about the abortion. So we might say you should not have an abortion, but all we really mean there is abortion. Ugh. Or we might say abortion can be right, in which case we mean something like hooray for abortion or a hooray for freedom of choice or something like that. But it's not a fact about abortion, it's an attitude to abortion. Once any differences are resolved, the only reasoning we can do is concerning about ethical issues is the empirical facts of the case. So if you were to say to me, murder of infants, murder of babies is right, I can't give you facts that make it wrong, but I could say to you, but did you know how upset the mother will be? Did you know that the father will be broken-hearted? Did you know that the child will suffer? None of those make it wrong, but they might change how you feel. Yes, if you start thinking about those other people, it might change how you feel about it. You can actually compare that in some ways to smoking. They used to put facts on cigarette boxes, things like smoking can shorten your life. But they found that what didn't have all that much effect. So what they did was they went for emotions instead, and they just put pictures of like diseased lungs and bad arteries and so on to make you feel disgust, because it turned out that disgust is what changes behaviour. And this is the same thing here, really. So you can give people facts, but facts aren't really important. Facts are only important if they change how people feel their emotions. If they don't, the facts won't matter. Okay. And as they say, abortion is good means hooray for abortion. It's neither evidence nor fact. It's just your attitude. You can change your attitude. You and I can have different attitudes. There is no correct attitude. So it's not true fact. It's not cognitivist. It's non-cognitivist. I hope that's pretty clear. Most of your notes so far seem to have understood that, but I wanted to just go over it. And then we've got these strengths, and some of you have emailed me about some of these strengths. So, number one, emotivism avoids the naturalistic fallacy. Okay, so we've seen the naturalistic fallacy is any attempt to define the good in terms of natural things. So emotivism, of course, avoids that because it doesn't define the good. It doesn't reduce the good to natural things at all. Instead, it simply says the good is an attitude towards natural things. So no naturalistic fallacy, because we're not trying to reduce the good to the natural world at all. We're just saying attitudes to the natural world. It acknowledges the is ought gap. Yes, so the is are the facts. The ought is how the facts ought to be. And it just accepts that. Yes, there are facts out there, and then there are attitudes towards facts. And moral thinking is just an attitude towards the facts. You can't move from facts to oughts, but it doesn't try to. It just says there are facts, and then we have feelings about them. Okay. So it can account for moral motivation, because as we've seen, reason is and must always be the slave of the passions. It's how you feel, your emotional response actually makes you act. And so if I say Jonathan did it because it was right, you might say, well, why did he care if it was right? If I say Jonathan didn't do it because it made him feel violently sick to even think of doing it, you know, that's fair enough, really. I wouldn't do it if I felt that way also. Okay. There are no queer entities out there in the form of non-natural properties. This is really getting at more and intuitionism. You don't have to say, well, what is the good? It's not natural. It must be a non-natural thing floating out there. Maybe it's to do with God or angels or goodness. No, nonsense. It's just your attitudes. And we understand attitudes. They're just mental processes. There is no good out there. There's just your attitude to the world. Nothing queer. So, emotivism is simpler than non-naturalism because moral values just aren't things. I think really 5 and 4 are effectively the same thing. So I'm not sure why they've put those separately. So aren't things anti-realist? Yeah? It can easily account for the variety of moral values around the world. So I think that's really getting at Mackey's argument from relativity. Yes, so we can easily understand why there are so many different moral codes. There are just lots of different attitudes. It's like we're not surprised that he likes curry, and she likes Chinese, and they like Thai, and he likes, I don't know, McDonald's or whatever other muck it might be. Yeah, well, they're just attitudes. They're just personal tastes. Of course, there are a variety. There's a variety of people, so we don't have any problems with that then. Number 7, someone emailed me about this one. It can easily account for the common experience we all have. Moral disputes never seem to get anywhere. Yeah, there isn't anything to argue about. Yeah, if you think that abortion is wrong, and she thinks abortion is right, and he's undecided, well, you can sit around and put the facts down. This is how many abortions happen. This is how abortion is done, or blah, 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 blah. But if that doesn't change anyone's mind, which it never does, or very rarely, what can you do? Well, you can't. Moral disputes don't get anywhere because people just have a feel and they stick with it on the whole. Instead, you're going to have to try and change people's attitude. And if you think about how you might do that, it might be by showing them disturbing images and so on. So, for instance, some people have moved to becoming vegetarian not because someone said, did you know that animals suffer? And I said, yes, but don't care very much. But when they are given like video of what actually happens to the animals or whatever, and then they feel their attitude changes because they start feeling some pity or emotion of some sort. I mean, if they don't feel any pity or emotion when they see the video, they won't change. Yeah? So reasoning doesn't apply. There's no arguing about it. Rather, like if you like Marmite and I don't, and you try to give me reasons to start liking Marmite, I mean, you're not going to get anywhere. And that seems to be the case with moral behaviour and moral feelings. So, and then number 8, moral disputes are often highly charged. And I'm sure you've come across this. If you think something is wrong and someone else thinks it's right, well, the emotional responses that go up. I mean, you only have to look at things like, well, the Black Lives Matters and so on. People have not just had a calm, rational discussion about racism. Of course not. They get emotionally charged. They get excited about it, and it matters to them, and they argue, and they wave banners, and in some cases fight, and so on and so forth. So, immoral disputes are often highly charged. You might wonder whether they're always that way, and so on and so forth. So, we will be looking at the arguments against as well, but I wanted to go over those. I hope that helps. I do want the notes to be done well. Try and give examples. Don't, when you rank them, don't just put 1, 3, 5 or something. Do say, I think this is the most important reason because, and really develop your ideas a little bit. Okay.